Hey, good morning, guys. Today, or this morning, I should say, I'm going to go ahead and tackle the change on the rear diff fluid, or in front, both diffs, actually, sorry. Today, I'm going to go ahead and tackle, let's try that again. It's morning. I've only had one cup of coffee. Today, I'm actually going to tackle the diff fluid change on the Jeep. And shout out to the guys at River City Differential. They did my re-gearing to the 513 gears. They're actually in the Rancho Cordova area, just on the other side of the freeway from Metalcloak, actually. And so I contacted them, first of all, to find out which diff fluid to use, because I see a lot of discussions about this. And the one that they recommended is actually the 7590 AMSOIL. So I hear people in the discussion forums, I read people in the discussion forums talking about using the 75140 in the rear. But when I asked, 7590 I think is good enough. I don't know, if you guys have differing opinions, let me know down in the comments. But this is what we're going to be using today. I've actually got the skid plates on the diffs. So step one for me is going to be removing those skid plates. That hurt. That was a knuckle buster.
Hey, are you still going on a bike ride?
Why? Good old-fashioned stick stuck under the diff. Before I go ahead and start loosening all the bolts, and this is a little different for me now because I've got the Metalcloak diff cover. So I've got small Allen bolts instead. To be specific, I think those are a 6mm if I remember correctly. But what I want to do first is go ahead and remove this drain plug. What that's going to allow is some air to get inside, so that as I go to start to drain this, it'll just flow as I loosen the bolts and crack it loose, and I don't end up with a big giant flood of oil all over the place. And that's just the fill plug. So if anything, you may have a little bit of gear oil seep out right here, but you shouldn't have it just oozing out. And what they put on there was just some orange RTV to make sure it stayed sealed. And you can see, and what I'll do is poke my finger in here, see how low I am. Yeah, look I can't even touch the gear oil in the front. So that's definitely low in the front. So what I'm going to do right now is go ahead and break all these loose real quick. And these shouldn't be torqued too tight. It's usually about 30 pounds of pressure to torque them when you tighten them. They don't have to be super duper tight. And I'm assuming that when I go to pull this off, it's not going to be really easy to get off of here because it's on here with RTV. So this is not using the stock reusable gasket. This is a little encouraging. I just literally broke all the bolts loose. I haven't even tried to loosen the actual diff cover yet, but I'm already seeing a little bit of gear oil seeping out around the edge. That's actually quite encouraging for me because that means it's not going to take a whole lot of effort to get the diff cover off. So what I'm doing right now is letting it out slow so I don't have a giant gush that could potentially get all over the place. And that allows me to make sure it ends up in the drain pan. By the way, diff fluid is one of the stinkiest fluids you'll ever deal with. So yeah, to the extent you can keep it off of everything else, it's a really good idea. As you can see, what I did was I left the two top bolts just kind of loosely in there to hold it up so I could do this and just kind of open the bottom. And yeah, that makes things quite a bit easier. Okay, so now that we've got most of the oil out of the actual diff, I'm gonna go ahead and pull these top two bolts out. And then we'll go ahead and clean the diff cover up real good because we're going to want to apply new RTV silicone to this. So everything on the mating surface is going to have to be a nice clean surface so we get a good seal again when we put the diff cover back on. Now what we're going to do while we have this off, we're going to go ahead and kind of do a quick look at this. Make sure we don't have any chipped teeth or anything while we have this open. Make sure everything's good and clean and make sure we don't have any problems in here. This is a good opportunity to do a good inspection of your diff before putting things back together. God knows we beat the heck out of these things when we're four-wheeling, so this is a good good opportunity to look at it. Okay guys, so now what you'll see is I've actually gone around and I've literally triple cleaned and really got all the gasket stuff off of the mating surface here, and same thing here, triple cleaned and use a degreaser and everything on here so that our new gasket maker will make a nice gasket and have good adhesion to the actual diff. So this is a key point, because if you don't, in fact, I even clean out these holes a little bit to make sure that there's not any oil in those as I screw the bolts in. We don't want that to contaminate any surfaces or anything as we put the gasket maker on, and that'll keep things really clean. They make a 1-minute gasket maker. I'm not that fast, so I use the 90-minute gasket maker. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let this cure. So I'll give this a rest, and I had a little bit of a distraction today, so I had to take a break right in the middle of the day, and unfortunately the sun is going down. I'm gonna give this about, like I said, 90 minutes to let it cure. By the way, the stuff that was recommended by the guy that did the diff, the Right Stuff, I don't know if you guys can see that, the Right Stuff gasket maker, and yeah, I used the 90 minute gray. He actually said black or gray would work, but the stuff I took off was actually gray, so I went ahead and put gray back on it. Before the gasket maker seals up completely, is I'm gonna go ahead and torque these down to about 30, I think it's 30 pounds is the spec for the diff cover. But, so, quick review of the steps. Drain the fluid, pull the gasket, pull the diff cover off, clean the diff cover really good, clean the surfaces really good, make sure that you get a degreaser on there so that the gasket's actually going to stick really well, and then put it all back on. Give it 90 minutes to cure. We'll go ahead and fill it. I think I mentioned to you guys earlier, the stuff my diff guy told me to use is the Amsoil, and he said 75-90 in both. I mentioned to you I was going to let the silicone kind of harden up for 90 minutes, then go ahead and torque things down to 30 psi, or 30 pounds, sorry, psi, 30 pounds. I actually snapped off a bolt in my diff, and so I went ahead and pulled things off, and as you can see now, I'm drilling that out so that I can get an easy out in there and back that bolt out. So yeah, things don't always go as planned. What should have been roughly a 2-hour job, you know, including letting the stuff harden up for 90 minutes. So silly. But so one thought I had was the only reason I'm running these diff covers for Metalcloak is because I'm using their skids. If you're not using their skid plate on the front, you don't really need this diff cover. And I was questioning the value of it. You know, I have rarely hit the front diff cover. I mean, I did have sticks and things poked in. Oh no, I take that back. It's pretty scuffed up. I guess I do hit that diff quite often on rocks. So, I mean, I'm going to be putting it back on. There might be other solutions where you could use the stock diff cover, and which uses a reusable gasket. Reusable gasket is kind of nice. Don't have to use the silicone, but here I am back at work at it. So I'm going to knock this out. Slow speed, even pressure. That's key to drilling into steel. You don't want to heat up your drill bit and dull it. All right, there we go. Now I'll go ahead and clean the threads out in there. And notice I put a towel all along here to catch everything. I don't want a single little tiny granule of this metal getting inside the differential cover, because that could create a catastrophic failure in the future. So we want to keep things really clean inside. So something I'm doing right now, just to be sure that this doesn't happen again, is I'm running a tap down through all these just to clean any silicone and stuff out of the threads before I go ahead and reinstall this diff cover. So this will make sure that my torque is right on all the bolts and I don't run the risk of actually snapping a bolt off again. All right guys, you can see surface is super clean now. All the holes are actually cleaned out. So this should go a whole lot smoother this time. All right, so there you go. Diff cover back on. I did go ahead and buy new bolts here instead of trying to reuse the old ones. My fear there is that the old ones may have been torqued to spec and therefore trying to torque them again may be weak, so I went ahead and bought new bolts. I go ahead and put some RTV on the fill plug as well after I fill the diff, and then I go ahead and let that cure for 90 minutes as well before I actually drive the vehicle. So now that we're back together here, I can go ahead and put the skid plate back on and I can get started on the rear diff. But I'm not going to bore you guys with that because it's just going to be a replay of what we just did. So have a great day, you guys.